Okay, shalom, shalom, everyone. I'm here with Kyle Ajaka. I can't say the middle name. um, and we are going to have a conversation about DNA and what your results of your DNA test mean, what they can tell you about yourself, and why it's important to get a DNA test. Okay. I have not gotten my DNA test yet. I was actually going to, and then all this stuff happened. So, but I'm still going to go get the kit. So, um, just a minute. Let me share some places. Get the link. Oh, they be freezing people horribly. Just a minute. And I also, okay, for those of you who have not heard, I'm starting a landing page and we need information. I'm doing it with two other people in the community who's giving me more and more links. I appreciate that. But I want you guys to get a sneak peek. Now, Brother Ryan Shields is adamant about not making it a public thing at this point, because we know that there are people who are trying to basically research and write books and be an authority on our narrative, and we can't have that. Okay. So, but I am going to give a sneak peek so that way people can see, exactly what we're working on. And this is so people have a one-stop shop when they're trying to reach people or find where people are. So let me share my screen. And so this is what it's looking like so far. It's just a page of hyperlinks, basically. And it is telling us about businesses. If I can get there. Okay, here we go. We have ministries, women ministries, resources, children resources, Facebook pages, comforting scripture. I'm working on that today. That's why it's empty. COVID relief, Sabbath streaming, Passover information, businesses, YouTube pages, and reading, which I'm going to be working on that as well. So this is just a resource so people can get to where they need to get to or understand where the groups are. And we have resources like Faith Leaders Against Domestic Violence, should you be experiencing that and need help. A list of companies offering free aid, and then SDPC resources for coronavirus. So, yep, that is the landing page. We will not be giving it out. We're not mass giving this out. This will be given out to people that we know. Our practitioners of the faith, leaders, things like that. Not because we don't want everybody to have one, but because we don't want it just to be accessed by people who really are, against our movement. So with that, we'll go ahead and start with the articles I pulled up. Okay, so if you have been on my page, you have seen me pull up a snippet from this article. So I'm gonna stop my camera so we can, focus on the article. And we're going to, now this is from Live Science, and it basically tells us about genetic tests. Okay, that's Live Science. Hold on. Okay, so on the Live Science, it says genetic ancestry tests, mostly height, scientists said. Now, if you know me, you know I'm not a believer in DNA. I believe that I can tell you where your ancestors are now, close family and relatives, and of course, health issues you might have, right? I don't believe that it is it can tell you about ancient populations and things like that. Kyle has a different belief in the validity of DNA. So, Kyle, can you just tell us, like, why do you think DNA is valid, and why should we be seeking out these tests?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I would say, like the article that you posted, we need to discuss that. You're dealing with the science, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just the genetic science. It's something that evolves and it gets better over time, just like any other technology. Like that article is 13 years old at this point in time. If you think about technology in comparison, we didn't even have apps on our cell phones 13 years ago. You know what I'm saying? We didn't have we didn't even have 4G 13 years ago. So we've come a long way with technology. And so that's something that's not being taken into consideration, because you won't see someone that says it's most hype in 2020, 2019, 2018, because at that point they had already perfected that science, and they were moving on to do other things. But you're catching something and you're getting reviews in its inceptions, not at its peak. That's the first thing that I do want to say. So that's the reason why I do allow science to progress. I understand that it's a process. Once it gets better, it gets built upon, things of that sort. So I definitely have no issue whatsoever dealing with genetic science as far as ancestry.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I have a more recent article, and it talks about ancient populations and what technology was developed to go through that. But we'll go over that after we go through this. And so, yes, this is 2007. However, what it says is kind of, let's go through the article and then give me your opinions as we go through, okay?
Okay.
Okay, so I'm just going to read that out loud. Several companies now claim for as little as $100 in a swab of inner cheek, they can reveal a person's family tree and ancestral homeland. But more than a dozen scientists from various backgrounds say such recreational genetics or vanity tests have significant scientific limitations and rely on misconceptions about race and genetics. If a test taker, okay, so I'm going to stop after this. If a test taker is just interested in finding out where there are some people in the world that share the same DNA as them, then these tests can certainly tell them that, said Deborah Bolnick of the University of Texas in Austin. But they're not going to tell you every place or every group in the world where people share your DNA, nor will they necessarily be able to tell you exactly where your ancestors lived or what race or social group they identified with. So, have there been updates that can tell you what race you were and social group that you belong to?
Well, I mean, when you say social group, what does that mean? You mean like the religious class, or what do you? I'm not sure what that means.
Yeah, religious class or
like it only tells you about your physical characteristics. It doesn't tell you what a person thinks or what they subscribe to as a religious belief. But it can tell you what people was in certain areas, and then from there you can insert different information. That's up to the person who wants to interpret it. But I mean, you got like places like African DNA or 23andMe. They use different methods of organizing their fact. What I mean by that is like 23andMe, when they give you your test result, it comes in the form of as a state or a city, right? Where they tell you that you're from Nigeria or Ghana or Togo or Benin or whatever. But with African ancestry, they actually have a different method of gathering the DNA. When they gather it by your tribe. So they are able to tell you what tribe of people, not necessarily what group of people you come from. And that's really important for people in the diaspora, because we're looking necessarily not to find what place we come from. We're looking to find out who we are according to the people who are there, not what the quote unquote British or whatever you want to call those people. Right. And so, like, for instance, example of why I'm saying this, because like, for instance, the Yoruba people, the Yoruba peoples are a huge ethnic group in Nigeria, but they also extend into Ghana and Togo, you know what I'm saying? And Benin. So like, if you get a test result and you on your result, it says that you're 35%, Nigerian, then 25% from Benin, and 15% Togo. That's basically the testing population over the actual area that the Yoruba people live. So it could be kind of misleading for a person who does not necessarily understand African histories.
Right. So you would have to know the history of the people in order, and your family, in order to correctly match up, or I guess discern what the DNA is telling you, is what you're saying, right?
Well, not necessarily. You don't necessarily have to. I mean, it tells you that in the report. So like if you pull up a genetic study, matter of fact, I can pull up mine if you would like me to.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Wait, before let's get through this article and then you can do it, and then we can, see.
Okay.
I just want to get this the what they're saying. Okay. So more than 460,000 people have purchased genetic ancestry tests in the past 6 years, according to a recent study. That trend is likely to increase, scientists say. And so we know that the databases get updated by how many people are getting tested, right? Fueled by hype promises from companies selling the test, and by news stories about test takers such as Oprah Winfrey learning she is Zulu, or a Floridian accountant being told he descended from Mongolian warlord Genghis Khan. But such results are beyond the capabilities of current tests, and this is back in 2007, scientists say. In the Genghis Khan example, the company that performed the test, Oxford Genetics, did not have DNA samples from the Mongol warlord himself because his tomb has never been found. Instead, the company found that the accountant had a set of genetic markers very common in people from Eurasia, and particularly in these areas where Genghis Khan conquered. The rest was inference. Um, so wait. Okay. Most genetic ancestry tests involve the analysis of small snippets of DNA passed down only through the mother or only through the father. These tests can identify related individuals who share common maternal or paternal ancestor. And even where in the world people with your genetic signature live today. A common misconception about genetic ancestry testing, Bolnick said, is that it can reveal information about an individual's ancestry. It cannot. People assume these tests can tell you your race or ethnicity and reveal exactly where your ancestors lived or exactly what social group they identified with, she said. Recently, the website Ancestry.com rolled out a new service that allows people to mail in DNA samples to see if they have genetic cousins in the company's database and reveal their ancient origins. Yes, I have seen that. One problem with this approach, scientists says, is that because such tests analyze less than 1% of a person's genome, they will miss most of the person's relatives. So this is like when you go back exponentially, you have more and more ancestors. So I think we had talked about that. But you can only get one on each, every time you go back. And so there's a leaving out of so many other people who may have had influence on your life socially, if not ethnically, right? So if you take a mitochondrial on here, if you take a mitochondrial DNA test, you learn something about your mother's lineage. Bolnick said, if you go back 10 generations, that's telling you something about only one out of more than 1,000 ancestors. Such tests cannot account for recent migrations of people from their ancient homelands. Present-day patterns of residence are really identical to what existed in the past, and social groups have changed over time in name and composition, the scientists write. Bolnick and her colleagues encourage professional genetic and I can't say that word right now. Anthropological, there you go, associations to issue policy statements about genetic ancestry testing that urge either caution on the part of consumers or set limits on the claims companies can make. Personally, I would like to see some independent source of information about these tests so consumers could go somewhere besides the companies themselves and get information about what the test cannot tell them. So this is not the clip that I usually put up, but the clip that I usually pull up says that it can tell you about where your DNA is today, where people are that have these things today. And I think you told me that the autosomal DNA, those percentages are about where your DNA is found today, right?
Correct.
Okay. All right, so I'm done with that, and you can go ahead and pull up your thing and go through your explanation. And then I have the recent article which talks about a technology update after that.
Okay. Let's see. Trying to get logged in. I got sidetracked, my bad. But I do want to say one thing, and this is just me, and I totally disagree with the article's premise that you just read.
Hmm.
Now, if we were in 2007, then it would be the most accurate, up-to-date information, but it's not. So we would have to discuss it on a more, I guess, modern scale and modern version. That's why, I kind of don't deal with old articles when dealing with science and technology
Well,
because it's outdated.
let me ask you this: what since that article has been updated, can DNA tests right now tell you about the makeup and demographics of ancient populations?
It could, yeah, absolutely. It would tell you where you came from, where you went, where you ended up being, the whole nine. Like that's how it's advanced way past that point. Like you can look in your DNA, you can find the migration routes, you can find all of this of these people based on those migrations. So that's something that wasn't there. 14, 13, 14 years ago. It's something
But
that happened.
how are they developing? How are they developing the migration patterns? Is it through similar DNA that they're finding through the databases that they're collecting today, or do they have um, DNA from a collect or a random sample of people that they can trace back to certain periods of time?
Both. They are like they're not finding, but they're comparing the DNA to ancient findings. Like for instance, we have a place in West Africa. Not we. I don't live in West Africa, but I'm saying we because I'm West African in my core.
Mm.
But we have a place in West Africa in Nigeria that they actually have like bones of people that's 18,000 years ago. And so what they did was test these bones, and they have the same genetic structure as West Africans today, which is E1B1A. So and what they're doing, they're testing the localized populations. They're infusing that with their local traditions, their migration history and stories, and then they're able to present a migration route to tell you where you came from, and it actually explains it because it's a process of reverse engineering. So if I know this mutation happened here at 15,000 years ago, then I have another testing object I'm testing, and it has a different mutation in that same area, and you have those same factors that are lining up. Now you can deduce that this mutation occurred to these people, and this mutated to something else.
Okay. All right. Do you want to bring up your
Oh yeah. Uh, let's see. I think I am sharing screen now. All right, so this is my 23andMe ancestry results here. So with me, it shows that I am 84.2% West African of those places. It says Nigerian, Ghanaian, broadly West African, Senegambia. And so for me,
Like, can you clarify, like when they're giving you these percentages, they're not saying this is how much you have. They're saying this is where this is, right?
well, no, this is the autosomal DNA. Well, autosomal DNA is the expression of your DNA. So basically, 27.1% of the people, well, of my DNA is expressed in the people of Nigeria, and
Okay.
24, and this is expressed in Ghana. This is expressed there. So I
Mhm.
would be probably less Senegambian, but I would be more just straight up West African. And this is what my point I was making earlier, because I know I'm Yoruba. That's not a question for me, but how it shows on this particular test, it shows it spread out amongst these three areas: West African, Ghanaian, and Nigerian, because this is the place where the Oyo Empire was. And so that empire stretched out amongst multiple different states. So they should show it. And most people who have that are from this particular set, come E1B1A7, will show this very, very similarly, or some type of variation of this in their DNA as well.
Okay.
So also with
How did you get to Yoruba from just because that genetic makeup
yeah,
tells you that and you know the history of that particular
well on
housing group?
yeah, that too, but also on this test, like on this particular company, it only shows the states. But in different companies, you can use that same E1B1 code and find out which tribe it actually links to. Like I was saying, that's what African Ancestry does. They link you to the actual tribe. And so you're getting that same root information or same base information, and you can just use that with different testing. I'm trying to show. I want to be on the wrong page. Hold on a second. And here it shows. It shows basically a variant of everything that I have mixed in me for the most part. Then it also shows things that I'm not. So I'm not Ashkenazi Jew. I'm not from India. I'm not from any of these places here listed. I'm not from Egypt. I'm not Ethiopian. You know what I'm saying? So it rules out things that you are definitely not mixed with too. You know.
So that would normally go with the Israelite narrative that these people came from certain places. So if that were true for you, you would see that on there. Is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So not Jewish either, apparently.
Yeah. So you weren't a migrant from Europe. Although I have to tell you, and we need to bring up that study when they actually went there and did the DNA for those that were sent over to West Africa in Sao Tome. They didn't find any Ashkenazi.
They're not gonna find the Ashkenazi because those were not the Ashkenazim. Those were
the Sephardim. They didn't find any of their DNA there. So when we were talking, like behind the scenes after live. And so there was a hypothesis given out. I don't know. I don't want to bring his name out because I don't know if he has the resources or if he's already done something on it. But he said that the Ashkenazim, the Sephardim are displaced Ashkenazim Jews, which is why they have so many similarities in their DNA. But I can't substantiate that, but I can tell you that the Sephardim, the ones who said that they were, even the people there who said that they're descendants from those people, their DNA wasn't found there. And they did the same sampling or used the same methodology that they do for all groups who say that they have Jewish ancestry. Basically, they went in, they looked at archaeology, they, like you said, the Luso Africans or whatever. They had the architecture, stuff like that, and had the oral tradition of this is where we came from. But when they were tested, no Sephardim genetic relation was found. So they were actually mostly like most populations that say they are Jewish, they're mostly related to the demographic that they're around.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I mean, I'm not a person that's gonna sit here and say that none of the Ashkenazi Jews can be linked back to Israel because a lot of them can. The same way a lot of the Sephardim can. It's like a lot of the people who were the Luso, they definitely can too. So like all three of those groups have ties to that land. So if that's what the faith that is practiced by one has to understand that you are genetically tied to the people who are the Sephardic Jews and the people who are the Ashkenazi Jews, as well as the Lusos that are in West Africa and the Lakatos.
So in the live that you did with Brother Shields, y'all talked about something that I never even heard before, which was because it seemed like the place where you guys kind of like separated is that Mom is saying that there were Jews who came into the land once the Arab trade routes were open, and they came much earlier than those who were expelled from the Inquisition. Do you hold that to be true?
Yeah, I mean, we didn't disagree on that. We was in total agreement, and we talked about the map that they drew. We didn't talk about the map. We talked about the person. His name was Alexander Crescas. He actually had a map when they was doing trade in West Africa and the whole nine. So that's not something that I even dispute. The dispute is that those people were not West Africans, and Ron agrees with that as well. So I mean, like we didn't necessarily even disagree with anything. We were just having a public conversation of agreement so people can get better understanding, I think.
Right. But so I agree with that as well. And that's always what I heard, that, there was a migration into West Africa. There was a mixing with indigenous people that was already there, you know, and from there, whatever. So I think that none of us have a problem with that. Okay. So here's my latest article. This is in 2019 last year. Let me get there. DNA 2 allows you to trace your ancient ancestry. Okay, so this was January of 2019. So scientists, let's start here. Oh, well, let me read the summary real quick. Scientists at the University of Sheffield studying ancient DNA have created a tool allowing them to more accurately identify ancient Eurasian populations, which can be used to test an individual's similarity to ancient people who once roamed the earth. Okay. So scientists at the University of Sheffield studying ancient DNA have, okay, we already read that. Currently, the study of ancient DNA requires a lot of information to classify a skeleton to a population or find its biogeographical origins. Now, scientists have defined a new concept called ancient ancestry informative markers, AIMS. The group of mutations that are sufficiently informative to identify and classify ancient populations. The research led by Dr. Iman El-Haq from the University of Sheffield's Department of Animal and Plant Sciences saw the identification of a small group of AIMs that could be used to classify skeletons to ancient populations. So, okay, so this is the new technology that's coming out. Now they can identify for sure, ancient populations, although they limited to Eurasians for some reason. So I'm like, why? What was the reason for that? But if they're just now getting this information.
Wait. Where are you seeing that is limited? Because the reason why we understand that there's a Eurasian population is because they're able to understand the basal African strands. So like the article that you pulled up, it appears that the article is talking about what they use to discover it in that population, but it's not just limited to that though.
Well, I mean, they said to identify Eurasian, ancient Eurasian populations.
Yeah. I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm just saying that it's not limited to just Eurasian populations.
Okay. Well, this article is limiting. It's giving its limitation.
Yeah, exactly. That report that you have is about Eurasian population, so it's only speaking to that particular thing. But in order for them to know what a Eurasian population is, they have to know its older population, which is the African population or the sub-Saharan African population. And all those things are definitely being discovered. One more thing I do want to say, that I'm sorry about cutting you off, but the reason why we don't see as much archaeological evidence in West Africa is predominantly based on the environment, because we have in the environment, it is a rate of high deterioration, and I guess you would say what's the word I'm looking for here? Mind went blank. But basically, the samples are very, very limited. That's why it's such a big deal when they find one, because it's not really one that's conducive for fossilizing bones.
Okay. So I guess my question is like, okay, so now they have this technology to be able to determine ancient populations, right? So if this is new news, right? And now they're saying, hey, we have this technology. How were they doing it before? What were they identifying before to say that you were a part of this ancient group if they didn't have this technology? I guess that's my question.
Well, so the technology is only getting better. So what, like for instance, everyone who's had their DNA test done, they know periodically we get updates. Like it may be every 6 months, it may come twice in a month for some reason, but you get updates. And the reason why you're updating your DNA, because they're giving you more information and more detailed information regarding things. So before on my DNA, I don't recall having to go back, go into so much detail. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I remember it was a mass update. And this update was when they changed it from the E1B1A to the EP252, I believe it is. I may be wrong, but don't hold me to that. But they changed the classification because it became a little bit broader, and it encompassed and embodied I guess a larger group of people. You know what I'm saying? And so those are things that are expected with any type of science. Science is not 100% accurate. If we have that expectations of complete accuracy of anything that we deal with, we're looking at it wrong. Now it is 99.9, which is fairly reliable, but my whole point is, we have this method that we use today, and when new tools become available in the future, those new tools have the ability to change how we review the information of the past.
Okay, so I highlighted this part, and so this might be why. It says, Dr. Elhack said, we developed a new method that finds AIMS efficiently and have proved that it is accurate. AIMS, ancestry informative markers, have a long history in science and have been employed for the past decade by health and forensic experts. But Dr. Elhack said that when his team applied traditional AIMS finding tools to ancient DNA data, they were disappointed with their low accuracy. Ancient populations are much more diverse than modern ones, he said. Their diversity was reduced over the years following events such as the Neolithic Revolution and Black Death. So they had this technology, but it wasn't as accurate as this technology that they have developed here. And so pretty much that any use of that technology prior to their thing had a low accuracy. So could this be why at one point there was a lot of updates?
Well, that is part of it. I'm saying that updates are going to continue to come because right now we're updating to this, and the technology does not stop. So there's always going to be someone who's going to be a genetic engineer who's going to create another method to refine it and get it, even more narrowed down. And so when that happens in 3 to 4 years or 5 years or 6 months or whenever it happens, now the information is going to be more accurate and it's going to shift toward that, and it's going to narrow down the possibilities of, it's going to narrow down the scope of how the information is being viewed. Yeah, I think you're on mute, Sheik.
Hold on for just a minute.
Okay.
Okay, sorry. Okay, so I guess that was all of my questions, and I do want to bring up that study real quick. Hold on.
And this and this.
Okay.
I know this and sky and another. Come on, I'm going to the bathtub.
Okay, hold on.
And one more thing while you're finding your article that I do want to mention for people who may be interested in getting a DNA test done. I understand why certain things are different. I keep seeing people post that me and somebody they'll post an article with twins have slightly different DNA. And the DNA that they're showing, like the Y or the X, is not different. Only thing that's different is the autosomal DNA. The autosomal DNA is the combination of the maternal and the paternal and how it is being expressed. Excuse me. Nobody has the same expression of DNA. So if you're going into it and you have that type of understanding, that's why you may get disappointed with your results if you got a twin or triplets or whatever, but it's not supposed to be the same. DNA is random. It's a random amalgamation of both lineages coming together, and what you have is what you produce. And so you may see that you may have 17% British, and then your sister may have 16%. That's normal. It's completely normal. There's not anything to call the DNA or say it's a scam about, but that's just how DNA works. It's about the combination, and that's the autosomal DNA.
Thank you for that. I have a twin sister, so we
Really?
should get that
I did not
DNA.
know that. That's funny.
Yeah, she was on a page.
I've never seen that
When I
before.
first started my page, I was like, "That's my twin sister."
God,
We're fraternal though. Iman, you know her. You spoke to her before on
I
her
thought.
page. Hmm?
I probably thought it was you.
No, we don't look alike. We're fraternal.
Oh, okay. Well, I need to see her. Tag me on a post so I can look. Be nosy.
Okay. Okay. Here's the thing. Oh, did I not share? No. Hold on. Okay, so this is where we know the history. People do agree on the history here. Okay, and so while I do believe that the people coming in are not indigenous to the area, clearly these people have similarities to people in the area enough that they're showing similarities more to people in the area than anything. And Sephardim DNA is not found. So abstract. Sao Tome and Principe are two main islands of a small archipelago located in the Gulf of Guinea, western equatorial African coast. These islands were probably uninhabited at the time of the Portuguese discovery in 1471. After the Portuguese decree of expulsion, many new Christians fled to Sao Tome since the Inquisition was never established there. Several documents attest to the continuous movement of new Christians to these islands, which worked as a refuge from inquisitional prosecutions. To elucidate the genetic impact of the historical Jewish migrations to Sao Tome, we selected a sample of unrelated individuals based on the following criteria: sharing surnames with those included in the historical reports as Jewish migrants, showing cultural practices putatively related to the Jewish religion. Both maternal and paternal lineages were investigated using the complete mitochondria DNA control region, along with 22 YSMPs and 23 YSTR markers. Moreover, 83 autosomal insertion or deletion markers were analyzed. So I'm not going to read all this. People, they go through their methods. Results: most mitochondrial DNA haplogroups detected in our sample are of African origin, 95%. A single sample belongs to the European haplogroup HVO, figure 1A, which is not included in the HVO-B clade of the Portuguese Jewish founding lineage. Although higher than that of mitochondrial DNA, the frequency of European Y chromosomes, 20%, was not significantly different from that previously observed in samples from the general population. Moreover, the putative Jewish haplogroups J and T were not detected either. So the proportions of African and European ancestries obtained in the analysis of autosomal endos were 86% and 14% respectively. The European ancestry was just slightly higher than the expected based on the average value calculated for mitochondrial DNA and Y chromosome haplogroups, 12.5%. This can be the result of diverse sex-based admixture. So here goes where these people came in. Sex-based biased admixture, events taking place in different periods after the colonization of Sao Tome. Finally, a significant higher European ancestry was found for the two individuals carrying the European Y chromosomes, R1b1, M529, and R1b1, U152. When compared to the average population, this supports a recent admixture rather than an old European influx of the archipelago. So the European that they found was more recent than, them coming in years ago. So, I mean, what are your thoughts and opinions about what they're saying here? Because the history does support that there were Jews exposed to Sao Tome, yet we're not finding the markers that you would see from Sephardic Jews. So, what do you think? Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, the first thing that I kind of am confused about is when they say the word recent, what they mean by recent. That'll be the first thing that I would have to get, as more information about, because I doubt that they're talking about 2020, 2019. I would probably look to them talking about 500 years, that range, recent. If I was going to be just guessing, right, and not the base genetic structure. It definitely does show that, especially with these different markers, when you did the results section and discussion in that particular section, it speaks upon the mixing and how those local populations did have, African ancestry. But I don't dispute that at all. I believe everyone has African ancestry in their genetics, and like I have a plethora of articles in the Levant region that show them having way more than what you just showed in African ancestry, and they're Eurasian. So it is very, very it can be interpreted differently, depends on how a person is reading this, but I do not believe that these people have anything that are tying them 100% to being West African, but they do have African characteristics. That's what I get from this article.
So my question is, where would that DNA have gone? And I've asked Marcus Webb this, Rudy's on here, asked him that, where'd the DNA go? My thing is not necessarily that they were West Africans per se, but they definitely were Africans. Okay, so Rudy's saying it's a very small number of Jews expelled to Sao Tome, 600 out of 2,000 survive. There's no actual number, so quoting a number is disingenuous because there's no number there. We do know that there was a presence there because the Catholic Church does document that a bishop came back saying it was too Jewish. They likely mixed with the general Portuguese and African population. Okay, so that would just wipe out their genetics. Is that true, Kyle, that their genetics would just be wiped out and there would be no traces of their genetics? And if that's so, then wouldn't that be true for anybody doing their DNA test, that there may have been some ancestors that are not accounted for?
Well, that's not necessarily like when you, like, for instance, like if you and a Caucasian, well, I'm sure it's not going to happen. I know how you are, but I'm to give you an example. If you and a Caucasian person was to reproduce and bring forth a child, right, it would be, quote unquote, whatever that father's paternal DNA and whatever your mother's mitochondrial DNA, and it's still going to be there. It's going to resonate. Now, over a period of time, if that mixing keep on occurring, then you'll see less and less of it, but it'll still be there. It'll still exist. You see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't just dissipate. It's still going to be available for you to notice that. And especially when you're dealing with like the paternal DNA, the patrilineal DNA, you definitely show it there. So I guess what I'm saying is, and my confusion about this argument of DNA for on the Hebrew stance is, let's really take a look at who these people are that was in Spain and in Portugal, because they were definitely dark-skinned people. I'm not denying that. They definitely, at some point, they were sub-Saharan Africans that mixed with the West Eurasian people. These are what we call the Berber people. The Berbers are the Moors. These are the people who was in Northeast Africa and Spain and stuff. You know what I'm saying? That was there. Their genetics show that. And then the same genetics that we have from these people that we know are their genetics are the genetics that are in that report that you just read. Now, some of those people may have mixed more with the local populations over time, but they still have that trace DNA of R and J that we do not have as indigenous West Africans. So as an indigenous West African, if you do not have a J or R marker, you should not even claim to be from Northeast Africa because your people never been there.
But see, they don't have R or J. That's what the article said. They don't have those markers, and they're like, oh, what happened here? We know the history says that they came there.
Well, no, the architecture pulled up. I pulled it up as well, and it shows the mix of those people. It shows that R1B1A, M529, R1B2, V88, R1B1A, U152, and R1B1A, S116 is their genetic structure, as well as some of them do have E1B1A, M2. So it's showing you that they are definitely from Northeast Africa because they have those genetic markers that we don't have. Like, I don't have none of those markers. You know, I don't like the people.
But they're saying that it's recent, that it doesn't tie back to this time, because that's what they're investigating. They're investigating this Sao Tome and Principe and the expulsion of Jews there. So they're saying that those mixtures come later than the time period that they are actually, you know, trying to prove this genetic connection.
Okay, so
but we don't have the year. I will give you that. We don't have the year, but it says it's recent, so it's not.
Get off.
Okay. The reason why I'm saying this is because the people who they were disputing being, right, they are like, we have their DNA from 45,000 years ago. I'll pull the report right quick so we can see it, and they do not have anything to do with West Africa, except for the fact that they migrated and mutated from a sub-Saharan African subclave at some point in time.
I'm saying in the chat that there were a lot of Portuguese settlers who came later, and so this is why this is a recent admixture, not during that time.
The Portuguese that came, they came after the expulsion of the Jews. Now we also, like I was saying, it's two groups mainly that happened, right? You have the people who were the Sephardics or the Berber people. And then you also had the Portuguese expulsion, right? So these are two separate things that happened. And thirdly, we had some European Jews.
No. They're saying that the admixture is not coming from that time period. It's coming from a recent admixture. So recent, we don't know how recent they're speaking of, and that's the point that I will give you. But they're saying that this is not going way back. This is not going back to prove this hypothesis. The hypothesis was that there was an expulsion of Jews to Sao Tome and Principe. These people must be related, and they could not find that was the case because the admixture of the R marker and that are recent, not going back that far. Did we read the conclusion? I don't know if we read the conclusion. Hold on. I'm going to share the page.
Okay.
Read the conclusion.
You want me to read it?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
All right. So in the present study, using a large set, both recombining and non-combining markers, no significant differences were detected between the alleged Jewish descendants and the host population, showing that no particular database is required in forensic cases in relation to Jewish ancestry, contrasting with previous findings, no population heterogeneity when other ethnic criteria were considered. Basically, that the test was inconclusive.
Well, the inconclusives were they didn't find what they was looking for. I mean, it seems like
they didn't find
what they was looking for, and so and I'm getting, it does say, and Marcus Webb posted it up that they did. Sorry, my baby's ready for daycare. Anyway, so it said, well, maybe other sampling has to be done. Maybe other methods have to be done to find this. But they use the same method, like they would anybody else, any other group. So a Facebook user says they're also looking at modern Sephardim as a comparison. Well, what are they? we have that genetic material. I don't know what you're saying there, but they established the Sephardim not just on the modern people who's walking around today, right? Isn't this where the database comes in and says, okay, this is the standard, this is the standard?
Well,
There's some.
what at what point in time did the people who lived in Northeast Africa, when were they black? That's what we need to start at. When were they Negroes like me and you were Negroes?
It had the same genetics.
Yes, because that's what y'all.
I don't know. I don't know that, but I know that E1B1A it has been found in the Levant through skull study, and I posted that book up too. But I mean, people can travel. I'm not saying that everybody there was E1B1A. I'm saying that people have traveled and intermixed, for as long as we can remember. So
I believe that's. I would double check because I believe you're talking about is E1B1B with the skull study, and it was showing that was coming from the south. There was Nubians, but that's where E1B1B is, not E1B1A. A went to the west, and E went to the east. And I believe I know exactly what study you're talking about. If so, just review it and make sure that it's not a B instead of an A.
Let me post it up so we can look.
Because the study I found, it was talking about, I believe it was Ramses, and with Ramses' history, he came from the south. He came from Nubia, and
So I have to go back to my old group and look for this because somebody posted it up, and they posted up the excerpts that actually said that it was in the Levant region from the skull study. So this is the Ancient Black Hebrews, Volume 2, The Forensic Proof Simply Explained, Pomegranate Series, Book 2. And I think the author is
Gert Muller. Yeah, I got that book. In fact, I used my presentation. Gert Muller says specifically the opposite. It's actually part of my presentation. Gert Muller positions that those people, they definitely came, but they mutated. And so in the ancient, world, they definitely had some, E1B1B, but they mutated. And basically his position is that the real Jews were like the Sephardim, and there was dark-skinned people originally, but they was not Negroes. And I think that's where a lot of Hebrews, they kind of attach themselves based on a person's skin color, not necessarily their ethnic group. And I think that's a huge flaw that's being made in the community.
So how often do these mutations occur? Do you know?
Between 6,000 to 8,000 years. It would depend on the conditions, the environment, the diet. One of the biggest things that causes genetic mutations is isolation and environment. So you're isolated from a group of people and you're forced to, mix with each other over a period of time, then you see that mutation happen. Now, in the society that we live in today, where there's a lot of trade, it's a lot of intermarriage, intermingling, it's going to be very interesting in the future to see. Well, I'm sure we're going to be dead, but what the next mutation would show about us. But it's kind of weird. But like based on the genetic mutations, how genetic mutations happen, if we were to mutate today, we would no longer be classified as an African, which is kind of interesting.
Okay, so this is my question: 6,000 years from now, when we have this mutation, right? Mm-hmm. And this new genetics is out there, will we be the same people? Will they say, oh, you guys are different than these people? Because it seems like.
Yeah, okay, so when that particular thing happens, I don't foresee it happening in I guess a reasonable way. But what I'm saying is like isolation is the key. If we isolate ourselves and we don't intermix with people, then we will have just a traditional normal mutation. We may go from E1B1A7 to A8 or A9, something like that. But if we're mixing with Chinese people and Europeans, then we're going to produce a new haplogroup of people because that's the expression of your DNA. So we're going to produce a new group of something. This is why when you see the people who are in the Levant region, that's why they have a specific genetic marker, because they were mixing with the people of that land, which are predominantly the Neanderthals. And we like there's a lot of Neanderthals in the Levant. One of the older ones is a mud, I believe it's a mud one. It's a skull that was found there, dates back, I believe, 40,000 years. So the people that was there, they definitely have a lot of mixing with the Neanderthals, and that has to be taken in consideration.
Okay, so according to you, where did life start? Did it start in East Africa or did it start in West Africa?
Well, it's not according to me. So according to the science, it started in Central Africa, in Eastern Central Africa, and then you have the split where the one went to the east, one went to the west. They settled there. They started to have their own populations. They got secluded due to predominantly like the last ice age. This is when the Sahara Desert started to dry up, and they weren't able to recombine and remix because it's very difficult to cross the whole Sahara Desert. So you got this group of people who are southern Africa that's been separated for thousands of years, mingling with themselves. They finally established a trade line. That trade line is, I believe, is what we call the Silk Road or whatever you want to call it. It goes into Asia, and they were connected. They were the westernmost point of that trade. They were starting to do trade in West Africa. They started to intermingle and mix. This is where you have, I think, right around 6th or 7th century BC is when we see the mixing start on a heavy level. Now
Well, I asked that because remember before when we were talking, um, uh, you, when we talked about the E1B1A and the E1B1B, you said that the E1B1A is older than E1B1B.
Yeah, the reason why I say it's older, I was just talking about how they labeled it. So like A comes before B. So they were saying that came before B did. Now, but before that, you have E1B1. E1B1 is older than that. Then you have some people have A. So like I'm just saying that according to the way that it's structured, A is before B and 1 is before 7. So that means that 1
How
is.
does that? But how does that go in relation to the historical narrative that life started? Well, I thought it was. I always thought it was East Africa. They're saying Ethiopia, around Ethiopia area. They had a migration out. They came back in, and then they went west. That is the outer what the outer Africa theory is saying, to my knowledge.
No, it's not. I have you want to pull it up?
Yeah.
The out of Africa doesn't say they went. Well, okay. Let me rephrase this. It definitely shows that they went out of Africa and came back in, but it also shows at that same time there was a fork that happened when they was in South Africa. And let me see if I can pull it up on my screen here. There we go. And we can read this together. And since you have such an eloquent voice and you forced me to read your article, I'll force you to read mine.
I have baby in the background now. That's why.
Oh,
That's why I asked you.
okay. Let's see.
Give me just a minute. I'll be right back.
Okay. Can I share my screen? Let me see. I know y'all out there watching. I don't want to have y'all bored, so I'm trying to share my screen. But I can't because she's sharing hers, I think. Dang it. If y'all can see my screen, press 1 because I think she's still sharing her screen, so I can't share mine, unfortunately. Well, hope everybody out there staying safe. Get your vitamin C, get y'all some sunlight. Make sure y'all stay active out there so we can beat this whole corona crap, man. Oh, that's the wrong one. Dang it. Where is it? You want to do one? There we go. And to whoever was talking about if Jews migrated to West Africa, they would have likely intermarried and converted many local populations. Well, they didn't convert a lot of the local populations. They converted the people of the family that they laid with, and also they converted people that they was doing trade with, because Judaism was definitely a factor of commerce, not necessarily religion. So that's something that we definitely have to consider as well, just going forward. So, and I'll try to answer y'all questions in the chat. Said Ron Shields and Remley Anoa maintain a hypothesis of acculturation into the existing culture that crystallized into Odanani. I'm not convinced as of yet. Okay, me and Ron actually had a pretty good discussion. When was that? Saturday or no, Sunday. So if you are following him on YouTube, go to his page. It was the next to last video. We had a good discussion on it, and he doesn't necessarily believe what you just put about is crystallized into Odanani, because Odanani is not anything to do with that. These were completely separate societies that had nothing to do with each other in its inception, that did have some people that came into West Africa and intermixed and intermarried with these people. And this is why you see a lot of the Igbo people that they claim to come from Erie, the son of Gad, and they say that Erie is a white person. So they believe that they descend directly from white people or Europeans. The same thing is prevalent in Oladu Equiano's study when he with his study, he actually describes these people, and he makes a comparison. Yes, it said that we do things like them, but it doesn't mean that we were doing it. And our people kind of use that bit of information to kind of build a faulty premise with the insertion of the ideas that he was actually a Jew himself, and that they were talking about people that was black or the Igbo as being Jews. And so now you have this culture and this belief that's being constructed. And with that culture and belief, you have a lot of very, very false, misleading information, predominantly being made by Hebrew Israelites in America with Photoshop. They go into these slave records and they take out where it says Negroes for sale. They put Hebrews for sale, Hebos for sale, and all kind of stuff. Like, they're just ridiculous. Like, that stuff, like, I don't get the point of going to that measure to manipulate someone's thought. And so now these people have a completely different narrative that they built up in their mind that doesn't necessarily agree with the facts, but you do have a layer of fact that's there that they built their premise off of. And so, like, the best lie has some elements of truth in it, and that's what they're doing. They're building an entire lie based off of some truth.
But is it an entire lie that there were Jews in the west coast of Africa?
No, that's not the lie. The lie is that they are those Jews on the west coast of Africa, and that those people who was living in the kingdom of Ouida, or the people who are in Yoruba land, or the people that was in the Igbo people, or the people that was in the Gadambi tribes, like, that's the lie, that those people indigenously did not exist until Jews got there and civilized them, or even made their society. That's the lie, and religion is keeping us from seeing this lie, because we live in a Western society where we're philosophically attached to that narrative. And it feels good because you have a God that you've been worshiping your entire life, and someone tells you and gives you some information that misleads you into believing that you are the chosen quote unquote people of that God, you're gonna definitely. I mean, I did it too. I attached myself to that, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. But then I also, you trust and you verify. I was always taught that I'm gonna trust you, but I'm gonna still verify this information. If it comes out to be true, I'm not gonna believe anything you ever tell me again because you've lied to me once. And I use that as my premise for doing anything scholastically. If I know someone, I feel more comfortable getting information from them, but I'm still gonna verify this stuff. And that's the problem, that most people do not take the step to verify it. Like for
But
instance,
here's the issue that I take um with what's being said here. I think it's like we should all just know we're not those people, but we don't know. You won't know until you do the DNA test to see if you have certain markers, or if migration patterns do show that you had somebody in that area. So to say we're all West Africans is just the other side of that totem pole. And so I think that when you look at racists who attack the movement, they'll claim that no Jews ever went into West Africa. I mean, they're spread all throughout the four corners of the earth, except for West Africa. Somehow that was on the continent where these people were. And so we can say ethnically they're not the same because they have different DNA, but we know that they came into the area and they did mix with people. And then as we go back exponentially, you're leaving out more and more ancestors that might have had a social impact on you. And that's the limitation of DNA.
no,
So
I get.
that we have to, keep in mind as we tell people who they are and who they ain't, because we really don't know, because we're really only accounting for one ancestor going back on each line.
Correct. I get what you're saying. I understand that, and I never said to a person what they are not. I'm saying the inverse. I'm saying that the Hebrew doctrine cannot tell people who they are without having any type of verification of the information. Like if you pull your DNA and you don't have anything that links you to Northeast Africa, there is no reason why a person can logically say that I am a West, because these people were West Eurasian. If you are from West Africa, you are not West Eurasian. These are people who are Indo-Europeans. Like you, it's mind blowing that people can say, "Well, I still could be." No, it's okay to be African. It's okay to be from West Africa, and that's the problem. We have so much self-hate in our community that we are open to being anything but West African, even if there's a preponderance of information that shows you that you're West African, your genetics, your nose, your hair, your lips, your eyes, the genetic testing that they do from you, the place that they picked you up from, the names on these slave records, the culture that was even done by these people. Like, we don't have any traces of Jewish culture in the Americas. We don't have anybody who came over here speaking Hebrew. Not one person. Not one person from West Africa came over here speaking Hebrew. I don't see not one person who came over here keeping that culture. We don't see it, but we do see people coming over here speaking
That's
Igbo.
debatable, Kyle, and you know that. But you know that's debatable.
No, it's
There are
not.
resources. Yeah, it is.
There is literally, if you find one, then how about that? We'll have this discussion again if you find somebody who came from West Africa. And I know you're going to go to Billy Simmons. That's the only person. He was in Texas. Billy Simmons came from Madagascar. He was a practicing Jewish convert, and he dealt prior to his conversion with facial scarification with his local tribe. So they're definitely not Jews.
He wondered why the Hebrews here didn't know his village in Africa, which was supposedly a totally Jewish village. So
Where
you're
did he
saying
say
that the white Jews came in and converted them, and that's how they became Jewish, is what you're saying?
Billy Simmons was a Jewish man slave. Yes, he was. Look it up.
He was a Jewish man slave, but he came from a village where they all practiced it. He did not even give any information on his whole village was converted.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, read the report, read his story. His whole village was
I did. I went to the Houston Daily Mail archive and got it.
And so he was converted, right?
No.
Okay, that's fine. Why does he have scarification on his face?
Why did he? I don't know. I can't answer that. I didn't read that he had scarification on his face. They said that he was speaking the Lashon, whatever. And they was like, how did he know that? You know, and so when he went around, he said, well, how come these Hebrews, now keep in mind, this person was kind of, now I don't know if we're talking about the same person, but was kind of lame. And he was like, well, how come the other Hebrews don't know about my village? You know, so he was confused why these white people that he's looking at that he thought were Jews too didn't know about his village. Meant the whole village practiced it. It wasn't that he learned it from a slave master.
I understand that, but he was a slave to a Jewish person. That's the point I'm making. And also with Billy Simmons was after slavery. This was the late 1800s.
Yeah, but slavery continued in Texas after the abolition of it.
Gotcha. Okay, but what I'm saying is, these people did not come over here doing the cargo slave trade. He did not come from West Africa. Like that's and what we're doing. We're using this term black to embody anything that's in society that has anything to do with possibly being a Jew, and we have to stop that. Like we can't say that just because a person has dark skin that he's black. Like I have no relation. You saw it on my DNA to anyone who lives in Ethiopia or Yemen or any of these places. They definitely, some of them are darker than me, you know. And they will, if they came around a bunch of white people, they will call them Negroes because Negro only means black. They will call them Moor because Moor only means black. And that's what we got to look at in these texts, because they're recording these things from the European perspective, and they're lumping us all up as black or Negro. It didn't matter to them. They just saw a bunch of black ass.
Well, that is the social construct of blackness, right? That's a social construct that they have derived all over. They don't see, oh well, he's a Negro and he's Ethiopian, you're all black, you know. And so I mean that's unfortunately the social construct of race right now. Okay, so I think, wait, there was something else I wanted to bring up with you. Can't remember. Yes. Okay. So let's summarize. Let's talk about things that we agree on. I think that we agree that there were people that no, Jews were not indigenous to West Africa, right?
Correct. They were not indigenous to West Africa.
They migrated in.
Well, when you say the term migrate, what do you mean? Do you mean that they was pushed out someplace, or did they come to take advantage? Because those are two different narratives, you know.
I would say both.
So
they were on the run for many times. So, you know, saying that they just came to trade and they went back home wouldn't be accurate. You know, some had to flee persecution.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that they came to establish trade. They came there and set up shop, and they was trading predominantly at that point in time. They were trading salt for gold. They had salt and we had gold. They was taking advantage of people by giving them salt for gold, right? That trade extended to ivory and also like dye. What color is that? The blue, indigo. And they started to do these type of trades. The indigo predominantly came from the oil people. But anyway, they was doing a trade with these people, right? And eventually, well, this is through the Islamic regime. They started to trade slaves. Once the slave trade became a popular thing, now you see the interference of the Jewish people, or the whatever you want to call it.
I see, and this is where okay, so this is another thing. I don't believe those that came through in earlier migrations. I'm not talking about when the Portuguese expelled people or when they were coming. I'm talking about like way before the Assyrian captivity. There were people coming into West Africa. Okay, I don't think that those people then in turn turned out to be slave traders. The slave traders that were Jews were the European Jews, the Sephardim, the Ashkenazi that were involved in that trade. You can't. I think. And those records show that it was them involved in the trade. I don't think that those who came in way before were a part of that. Some of them were actually involved in the trade. And that's why you will see people like yourself who have totally indigenous African DNA. And then you will see people who have taken their test that will have J and R markers as well.
Correct, and that's my point. If you do
Mm.
not have, well, if you have the J or R, you can claim whatever you want to, because it is a possibility for you at least. But for those of us that don't, it would make no logical sense to be attached to something so wholeheartedly that you have no proof of. Now,
Well, it's still a choice because you can be grafted in. But
that-
I just put that
that's
out there.
fine. If you grabbed it in, I don't want to see your ass on the corner yelling at people when they walk down the street on a Saturday. You know what I'm saying? If you make a decision, you can't go out there. If you make a religious decision to convert to that religion, you cannot tell people that you going to hell for being something that you're not. You know, that's all I'm saying with that. We need to stop the theological supremacy that's behind it, because the theological supremacy is backed by a belief that's not substantiated. Now, the point that I was trying to make earlier though is your premise is, I get it. You said that there were some people who was taking the San Tome. The brother in the chat said it was only 600. It could be 6,000. That's fine. Like, it could be 6,000. It can be 50,000. That number is still minimal in comparison to the amount of people who was taken in the cargo slave trade. So that is the minority. The other people that was there in West Africa were the Berbers, which are the Fulani are a group of Berber people, the Amaza people that was there, and the Lakatos, who were the people that mixed with the Africans. Those are the only people that you will ever see as being called a Jew. All three of them were enslavers of us as West Africans. So it makes no logical sense.
I have to disagree with that. I don't think that you could just limit it to those three groups that would have been practicing Judaism. There was a whole group of people who had to flee and who spread out in all directions. We agreed on that. They went all directions, and they did come to Africa, West Africa.
Now, flee where though? What are you talking about? When did they flee?
Well, whenever persecution came, there was people who were taken, there were people who fled, and there was people who stayed. That is just always what happened. And to say that West Africa wasn't a factor at all when it came to people's fleeing, I think that we cannot prove that for a fact. We cannot.
The people who fled West Africa, they went into Egypt predominantly and Elephantine, and they went into North Africa. Yes, I agree. And the Sudan, right? We don't have any
Sudan. Now, this is what wait. Let me bring this up. What is the definition of the Sudan? When you look at what the definition of the Sudan is all the way from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. That is what the definition says. And that's why I brought up the map, because that is not where the Sudan is today.
I got you. That's fine, right? Now, what I'm saying is we do not have, what I'm saying is this specifically. We do not have any record of a mass migration of people. I'm not discrediting the fact that some people came from the Sudan to West Africa. I'm actually building upon that premise for you if you will allow me to get it out, right? I'm saying that these people are a different ethnic group as Sub-Saharan West African indigenously. These people that's in the Sudan, if you read the Tariq al-Sudan, it shows you specifically that those people were a different group of people that was indigenous to that area. The same thing with the Tariq al-Fatash when you're dealing with Timbuktu. Even in Timbuktu, they even banned those people from even coming into that city because they was taking advantage of the people that was there, the local people. So we have to acknowledge this. It's okay to acknowledge this stuff. It's not bad. I get that that's your paradigm, but your paradigm that you stand with does not align with the facts of the people that was in that area. That's what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll say this: if it does, if you look at the old maps of Africa, where the Sudan is now is not where it was. It was actually, and I'm going to show it. Let me share my screen. Okay, so this is where the Sudan is located now. Okay, but when you look it up, let me see. Okay, so here it is. Sudan, definition of Sudan at dictionary.com. Can you see this?
We can. Mm-hmm.
Okay, a region in North Africa, south of the Sahara and Libyan deserts, extending from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. And I said, wait a minute, because I'm like, Sudan's right here. This is not all the way to the Atlantic. So then I had to keep on looking until I found a map that showed me the Sudan from the Atlantic to the Red Sea. Keep in mind, and people say, oh, well, I just don't agree with this map. And I'm like, but it shows the definition, which they did not change, of the Sudan, all the way extending to, well, not quite, the Atlantic, but extending more so than what we see on today's maps. And look what Ethiopia is called, Abyssinia. So people say that Kush in Abyssinia, and look where it's at, the Sudan. Where is that? West Africa. So, I mean, acknowledging that they went there and saying it and going by today's map, yeah, that would be totally separate from West Africa. But when you look at the actual definition of Sudan, and then you look at a map that corresponds with it, you'll see it goes way into West Africa.
Okay,
So
let me respond to that. So that entire argument was non sequitur. Let me tell you why, right? I'm using a colloquial term to point out a place of modern day maps, right? And what you're doing is you're taking that term because we know that Ghana is not where Ghana is today. We know that Ethiopia was a different place in ancient society and antiquity. But if
people don't know that, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, but you know and I know, right? So,
but you said, okay, so you're saying Sudan just as a reference point.
Yeah, I'm speaking on it where it is today. That's why it's called a 3 Sudan. You know what I'm saying? Because they're talking about a place that was relevant at this point in time, not in antiquity.
Okay. So when Eldad the Danite, and I know that you think that is totally fictional, right?
I didn't say that. Me and Ron both agreed that it's historical fiction.
Okay, it's historical fiction, meaning that there are historical elements in it that exist, right? So when he wrote about 180, right? 980, something like that.
I don't know about that one now. Let's Google this one. Can you Google when was Eldad the Danite? Well, I'll Google mine if you trust mine. What I'll say. Oh, look, you already got it. I want to say he was 8th century.
9th century. Okay. Okay. Let's. Hold on. Where did they get this map? Let's say school geography. I need to make it bigger. No, I need to make it bigger. I can't
see it. And I got my glasses on.
Yeah. I'll come back to this because it tells you where they got this map from. And then I went there to see if it was really there because, this is one of those sites that are telling you that things are different and trying to bring it out. And I was like, well, where are they getting this from? And I printed it out.
Yeah, like my thing is
they'll tell you where they're getting this map from. And when you go there, it is there. So
my thing is this. Well, this is my concern, right? My concern with this map is it has Ethiopia as being not even remotely near where it is today. And we know that's the Congo or the Republic of the Congo.
Right. Area. That was what was fascinating to me because if you go, I think this map is, I want to know the year because I think it's after, oh, there you go. Wait, hold on. I think it's like, I'm going to find the year of this map. And then once you find the year of the map, because I think I already did one time, and that's why I made a post. So I need to look at that post because it might say it in there. When you look at that, and then you filter history before that time and where they was talking about, yeah, Ethiopia is down here. We know Ethiopia is Abyssinia. Some people say Ethiopia was Kush, but Kush was like a large part of like right here. If you look at the Bible maps, So if Ethiopia wasn't Ethiopia, then where was Ethiopia?
Well,
So
I mean,
those are the questions that I
the,
would have.
Ethiopia, like let's focus on what Ethiopia means, right? Like because Sudan is a French term, like that's
Mhm.
it doesn't make any sense for anybody that's in Africa to speak that, right? The people who will call it Ethiopia, they would speak a indigenous language and it would mean something. And for me, I'm getting that this means what the area certain people were over. You know what I'm saying? That's how they because those names mean the same thing. I believe they mean black. I believe. Or
Ethiopia and Abyssinia.
no, Sudan.
Yeah, it's land of the blacks.
Yeah, and that's what.
I was actually looking for that definition when I found
But that's
this
what
definition.
Ethiopia means
I was
too.
like, huh?
That's what Ethiopia means because like the French name for Mali, the French call Mali Sudan.
Mhm. That's what Kemet means too, land of the
Yeah,
blacks. So,
yeah, like that's not what they call these places. They didn't call it those things. Well, in Disney, we didn't call them these things.
mhm. So basically, I'm gonna do more study on this, and then I'm gonna do a video about it because that does change. That layout changes everything.
It changes the entire paradigm of everything. Like I would say, look at that source
Everything.
because that source doesn't necessarily look to me as a legitimate source.
No, the web page is not a legitimate source, but I went to the source put on the map, and it's there.
Okay. Well, I mean, if it's on
It's
that map,
there.
we can deal with the cartographer that made the map because this is my first time seeing Ethiopia being uh basically the South Africa and the Congo region. That it literally makes no sense to me why it would be there or be
Well,
called.
they didn't change the definition. So where's the map that shows the Sudan going from the Atlantic to the Red Sea? Do you have one?
I don't have one.
Yeah. So that is the problem. They forgot to change the definition of it. And so then when you say, well, what are they talking about? And then you go looking, that's the only, well, that's not the only one. I found a couple of others. But when you go to the source that they're getting this from, it is there, meaning that these dudes done changed the map. And now history has to be filtered unless they're doing what you say that you're doing, which is that you're taking the term as we know it today to tell me about that specific area. So
I mean,
but that's just a like question out there. And something that we definitely have to do more digging into because you'll see that the Sudan goes right into West Africa upon the definition that is given. But we'll do that another time. I'm tired right now.
yeah,
So somebody saying European cartographers didn't know much about the interior of Africa until the late 19th century.
I would
Okay.
I would definitely agree with that. They like for instance, without the point I was trying to make was the people who own these places got to name them. You know, the people who rule these places got the name, all right. And I get your idea. It's very inclusive. But I would say let's speak about these things with the knowledge and understanding of what the Africans that are in those places or the people that are indigenous call themselves and call their lands, because otherwise we're only imposing the colonialism names and concepts onto something that may or may not be very accurate. And I say that because of, back to the Ouida thing, because it's definitely called the Kingdom of Ouida, but Ouida was also in Portugal. This is a place that the Portugal used to converse with. It like this was like like we have New Amsterdam. Amsterdam. This was Ouida, and the new Ouida was in Africa. This is where they fled to, and this is where they migrated, and they did their commerce, and they had trade routes. And we can show the trade routes. We can show like discussions and everything regarding those too. So
But I posted the original thing that was not written by Hebrew Israelites, by the way. It was written by Europeans, and it said that they named the area that because of the Judaic presence, and it's on 211 of what is that?
and that's what I just said though. Those Jews, they were from Portugal, right?
No, they were talking about why they named Ouida that area. They wasn't talking about the Jews that they brought there. They were talking about the people in the area.
What I'm saying though is they came from a place, right? And those places they came from, they had Jews there. That place was called Ouida. It doesn't mean Judah. It's Ouida. And if you look at
They're talking about deja vu. They're talking about Africa. They're not talking about Ouida in their country. They're talking about Ouida in Africa, because the whole thing, it's a travel guide. Let me get it. Hold on, let me get it. It's a travel guide of what they're seeing there, and they're reporting back. Hold on, I got too many windows open. Doing a lot here. Hold on. Let me just search for it. No, that didn't work. Oh man. So I posted this in on my page, Hebrew Israelite Information Exchange. Let me just look at myself. How about that? I'll look up myself because it was a recent post.
I'm gonna have to get off in a few moments here. I got to get back to my little assignment I was working on, but
okay.
Let's see.
I might have to go into the biblical mumble room. It's please. Oh, Matt, he got my sorry. He said something, talking stuff as usual. Let me put in Ouida. Oh, yep, I posted it under Messiah Crutchfield thing. And so we posted it, we said, go there, translate page 211. They didn't want to do that. It was like, nope, we ain't about to do that. And it's like, okay, well, it was done for you in this video, and they didn't want to. Here we go. I'm sorry, I had to go through all these tonight. I posted, Bulletin de la Société Languedocienne de Graphie. This is French, actually. But I translated it in both. You can go to page 211. Oh, I'm not sharing. Hold on. Let me share. Nope, that's not it either. Sorry, I'm trying to get back. I can't even see where we're at. Nope, take that down. Oh, here we go. So this is a free book online called Bulletin de la Société Languedocienne de Géographie. Okay, that's my little French that I took in high school coming through. And so right here, the second paragraph is what was translated. Wida, Fida, Hawida, Wida, Judah, or a Judah is a city, is a ville. And you know what? Let me go ahead and translate it right now. Okay, so I'm going to do it right on the screen so people see. I'm going to highlight this. And we know that they're not talking about, let's do French. They're not talking about Ouida in Portugal. They're talking about Ouida in Africa because they mentioned the Dahomey Empire.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe C D E H. Where's French? Oh, I got it all now.
There you go.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Hold on. And I read about 2 pages after because I'm like, wait, let me make sure I'm getting this right. It's not gonna. Oh, it's probably because it's a picture.
Hit copy. I don't think you hit. Well, hit trend. Yeah, there you go.
Oh, there you go. Okay, it's an ancient town frequented since the 6th century by the Portuguese. That's what it was saying. Slave traders who gave it its name. Its inhabitants were called the Judaism and were indeed considered as a remnant of dispersed tribes of Israel. In the north, the river of Allah, whose real name is Euphrates, had become the Euphrates for scholars, long attached to a separate kingdom, that of the Deji, whose capital was Sabi or Xavier. It was conquered in 1725 by the Dahomeyans, who called it Gleho, I don't know how to say that, Hoe or Ferme, and it has belonged to them ever since. Only the king of Dahomey cannot come there because his fetish forbids him to see and hear the sea. So they're talking about Africa. Definitely. And they're saying why they named it that. Now, Hebrew Israelites,
I literally said the same thing you just said, though. I was saying that the people who came from Ouida in Portugal, which it just said in that paper, named it after the place they came from. That's it.
No, it says its inhabitants. That means the people who live there.
The people who lived there were the people who came from Ouida in Portugal. No, I'm not speculating. This is a fact. Like I'm speculating on what prompted them to name it that, because I don't know what Ouida means. Ouida means help, but
right.
It's not the native name. Ouida is not a native name. It's a long word. That name is not in Yoruba. You know what I'm saying? They use it in Yoruba language, but it's not an indigenous name to those people.
Okay. But it said it was frequented, meaning that people visited since 16th century by the Portuguese. That's who was coming there, and they gave it its name. Its inhabitants were called the Judaism. That means the people who live there, not the people who are frequenting. The people who live there are called the Judaism, and they were indeed considered as a remnant of dispersed tribes of Israel.
I would challenge you to translate that sentence better too, because how can people weren't called Judaism? They may have practiced Judaism. There may be a better rendition of what it's saying, but I doubt people was called Judaism.
Okay, so there's 2. You can do it in Portuguese. I did it in both. You can do it in Portuguese, and you can do it. These habitants are said to be Jewish, and that's on the basis of a dispersed, and then it goes into French again because
that's fine. Like, do you claim to be Jewish? Because I'm telling you that the people who was living there. Matter of fact, we have a picture. I'm gonna show you the.
No, that's not what I would be claiming. That's what they would be observing, because that was the job of the author.
I'm gonna show you one of the people who lived there. That's what I'm trying to do. Okay.
Hold on for just a minute. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
All right, so can you pull up something for me if you don't mind? The person's name is Francisco Felix de Souza, Souza. Maybe I'll just pull it up. If you want me to pull it, if you gotta stop sharing your screen. You still there? Hello.
Yeah, I'm putting on a Moana costume. Just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Mommy.
All right, Moana, make way. Okay.
But I want to wear a necklace.
You don't have a necklace.
You go buy a necklace?
So this is the premises I was building on, just so I can kind of go back into mine right quick. So as you were correct, Ouida is definitely, that's what that place was called. These are the different, transliterations of that word. But the root of that
Hey,
word.
hold on, I pulled it up. I pulled him up. You want me to? Well, I got the Wikipedia page. Where do you want me to go to?
Well, I think right now I should be sharing my screen.
Oh, I didn't see it. Okay, there you go.
Yeah, I already have mine up. So let me go back. So I was
can't. Oh, I couldn't see it. There you go.
Yeah, I'm just reiterating what you was already talking about, and these are just the transliterations of it. Depends on what country or what dialect is being spoken. The transliteration may be slightly different. In French, as you can see, is Judah, and in Ouida is the French, or the Yoruba call it this Hueda. But a Judah is by Portuguese. It's from Portuguese, right? Well, by the Portuguese. Next thing is I do want to show you a Ouida in Portugal, so I can show you this is a real place. This is a real city that's in Portugal. This city is predominantly Jewish and European. This is the architecture. It goes back a while. I'm not sure if it has a time span for when it was founded on here, but I want to also talk about the matter of fact, I'm just gonna go right to the guy. His name is Francisco Felix de Souza. He was actually a slave captor. He says Francisco de Souza, a Portuguese colonist and a slave trader who was deeply influential in the regional politics of pre-colonial West Africa, namely current-day Nigeria, Benin, Ghana, and Togo. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this up because they was over in that area. That's exactly where this guy lived. This guy definitely has dark skin, as y'all can see on this picture. But he had such a great impression on that area because his family was so powerful in Ouida that guess what they did? They built a goddamn statue for this dude, man. There is a statue in Benin right now today of this guy who was the greatest slave trader of Benin, and he was a Jew. That's a problem. Like that's just crazy to me. It's not. I'm not. This ain't even got anything to do with our discussion. My problem is the fact that black people would a black country would allow a European slave trader to be a. This is a whole statue of him. You know what I'm saying? To be in a country to that because in Benin the politics are a little bit different, right? And it's like a divide. You got the local people that was in Benin, and then you also have the people who came in that was being oppressed. The people who was oppressed, kind of tend to lean toward if they're not practicing voodoo, they lean toward uplifting, and they think that slavery was a good thing because it brought them God. So these people are being uplifted in their society versus the people who was the indigenous peoples that's there. There's people who practice, the Fa or the voodoo practices. But it's not in that,
So what do you say to people who have actually went to the continent? Like I did an interview with Sister Omi Love. She's been to the continent. She spoke with royals. They gave her the the stories of, and this is the thing, like I'd say for sure that I've heard Garfield said that, well, they're just lying. But they actually have their stories, and it's been their stories for thousands of years. Are they just trying to be white? Do we say that they're lying on that, but then lying about the transatlantic slave trade? When some of them do not always agree that the transatlantic slave trade was as nearly as many people coming from that continent as stated. So, I mean, like, when do we believe people who are there and they're telling you this? Like, when do we believe them? Why don't we believe them? Is it just because they don't line up with what we think or believe? Or what? I mean, because she has actually been to the continent and has talked to these people. Oh, wait, before you answer that, think about that for a minute. I'm going to answer Rudy because I know it's you, Rudy, up in here.
Mommy, can you just jump over?
Okay. Rudy's in here and I'm going to address what he's saying. I'm sorry, my kitten is going crazy. I don't know why I have a cat.
Well, can I show one thing? Then I'll hop off.
Go ahead.
This on Facebook or YouTube?
Oh.
Okay. Can I show a video or will you get dinged? It's a short little clip.
I don't know. How long is it?
It's like 30 seconds at the most.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, if you monetize, I don't want to share it because if it's on somebody else's page, if they choose to.
No, I don't monetize.
Okay. All right, cool. So what I'm gonna do is share my screen, and I want to share this video with y'all regarding this is a Igbo chief speaking about how they became Jews.
StreamYard because I was playing clips one time and it wouldn't come up. I didn't play clips like the video. I was doing the audio and it didn't come up. So I don't know if they blocked that or what.
We have been clamoring on recording on our brothers from the Hebrews with the Israelites to come to arrest us.
Right. So now you're black. The Israelites currently in Israel are white. Do you think white Israelis are gonna come and save black people?
All right.
Do you think so?
What makes us black is because when our father the God left from Egypt, he didn't actually join his fellow brothers back to the promised land. He left behind in Egypt and later found himself down to this part of the world because of the scorching of the sun.
Okay.
He gradually became a big God. So from that, his descendants, who are now originated this people, that base here, that nationalize here, by the reason of the scorching of the sun, they start becoming black from one generation to another, from one generation to another. So that's why it looks as the Hebrews are white and one.
So I think you brought this up last night, though, didn't you? And then Ron pretty much said that they're basically, when they were looking for a myth, they didn't have one, and then they attached that to
because
their story.
And the reason why I played that is because these people are making this shit up as they go, right? Because that dude right there, what he just said is that Gad was, and one of the descendants of Gad came to Igbo land, they had sex, they reproduced, and that's how they became black, because they mixed with a white person. That shit is crazy.
Well, that is not what was told to Sister Omi Love when she went there and she talked to royals, chiefs and stuff like that. So I don't know. Who is this guy? Where is he from? Where was he at when she went and visited? And so, I mean, this is,
Yeah, I mean, but like anyone who subscribes to that belief, they do it because they was converted to these things, right? They were either converted spiritually because there's a lot of Jews that's doing conversion in Nigeria today, or these are people who are the Lakatos. I keep breaking up the Lakatos. That title only means when Jews came to Africa, they had sex with these people, and they're in the royal priesthoods and families, and they became politically powerful because now they was part of the I guess in the upper class system, and then they were able to manipulate these people to go to war with different factions, enslave other people because they was part of that infrastructure. And that's something that I recommend you to read about, because it would change how you view the dynamics of West Africa, because now you have this foreign power source being integrated into society, and it was being done solely for trade. It wasn't done for love. It wasn't done.
So the Igbo was empowered by these people, and that's why they think that they are Jews, is what you're saying?
Absolutely, because look
then how come they didn't have land there, and how come they're known as to be wanderers?
Who?
The Igbo. This is why they're fighting for land right now.
That's not what happened. The Igbo definitely. Look, matter of fact, I'm gonna send you a book. I'm gonna put it in the chat as well. This is the story of the Igbo people. The Igbo people, the Yoruba people, and the Fa, the Gandambe. These are the same groups of people. What happened was during the Biafra. This is when a civil war erupted. It's a political war now. These people broke up into different groups because they wanted control over different areas. The Igbo land is huge. They have their own land. They wanted more land. You know what I'm saying? They were trying to expand. Like, they have their own land. They were trying to expand their land into different areas, territory, predominantly the Yoruba territory, because the Yoruba was so powerful. This is the same reason. And the Yoruba is groups of people that just decide to unite.
I thought they were fighting to make Igbo land their own. Aren't they a part of Nigeria? I thought that was their big issue. No, that's not their fight.
They weren't wanderers. That's what I'm saying. Like, they were already there. They've been there 100 years BC. Like, we had that's where they get their name from, because they used to meet.
No, but the reason why they don't want to give them the land or let them be their own thing is because they said that you don't belong here. And this is what Kissinger wrote to was it Kissinger to Nixon? He said that the reason the conflict, he was writing about the conflict, and he was saying that the Igbo are known as the wandering Jews of Africa. And the reason why that they don't want to give them the land, because it's like, you don't belong here.
Okay,
and
so
they starve them. Yeah.
Nobody outside of theologians would ever say that these people are the wandering Jews. Not even Jewish, not Hebrew, but Igbo scholars themselves. I'm gonna pull up a book, and we're gonna read about the origins of the Igbo people.
But because you have contradicting tellings of the Igbo people, and that's why it becomes confusing. And I do think that there may have been a mix of people who were there and people who weren't, and I think that's why you're getting two different narratives. Because the narrative that you can say that you can give, I can read Remy Elono's book, and he's not going to say that he claims that there was migration there. So
yes, because he professes to. What I'm saying is, you have people who was indigenously in West Africa, right? And then you have people who came in. When they came in, they brought a alternative history, which is called the biblical narrative. And people, if you like to be a Christian, I cannot subscribe to what I subscribe to as a West African indigenous system, because they contradict one another. So you have to, when you convert to the Abrahamic faith, relieve yourself of all of your own history and subscribe to a different world narrative. This is about a world narrative now at this point in time. Because
so what documentation proves that they ditched their indigenous stuff and then adopted this? Because they seem not to know.
Okay. So do you know what Odinani is?
No.
All right, Odinani is the indigenous spiritual system of the Igbo people.
Okay.
Like in Odinani, that's their religion. Like, you see those practices. Like, and the reason why we know it. And matter of fact, let me show you this book right quick before I get off this thing. I gotta go in a second. Let me see. But like I was saying, like, they have different spiritual practices that's going, because in West Africa, it was not a highly literate society until after colonization even happened. Not as if they didn't have traditions, not as if they didn't have methods of recording information, but they didn't have a written language per se. You know what I'm saying? And so when colonization arose or happened there, this is when you have the infusion of Christianity and these different belief systems, because now instead of just being
I would say, let me say this, people would disagree with you on that.
That's fine. They can disagree. That is totally fine.
I heard that they did have one, and that when invaders came in, they burned most of their books or any type of records that they had. But go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, there's no proof in anything else in history that will substantiate that. So I would be disagreeing not with that person, but with the information that's out there. Okay. But let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm gonna have to hop off. Okay. So one last thing that I'm gonna share. This is a book, and I should have showed the title before I scroll down to the page. But this is a book by John M. Origi, right? And this talks about the Igbo people. It says that it's likely, for example, that the massive population movement stemmed from a dissertation of the Sahara, 2500 BC to 2300 BC, led to the infiltration of some displaced people into Igbo land. So this is showing you that they've been there since 2300 BC. You see what I'm saying? Like it's not as if they were fighting for this place. And this is the reason why I pulled up, because you were saying that they was wanderers. They've been in the same place for at least, what's that? Shit, we almost 4,000 years now. So I mean, if they wandered,
that would make them fairly new to the area, being that West Africa was inhabited and isolated and everything, like you said before.
But they were the people that was inhabiting it, though. That's what I'm saying. Like these exact same people were the same people who inhabited West Africa.
They were the original people who
yes.
who inhabited?
Yes.
The Igbo. Okay, so who are these other people that they're fighting with? They're all the same people, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Is that from
trying to find the source of one too. There we go.
Is that from DNA wise, a DNA standpoint, or no?
Yes, DNA. Let me show you. This ain't that's a report. Let me find the article on this though. There we go.
So then we go back to the article that says that DNA cannot tell you about your social upbringing, your social habits, or what you did religious wise, or your customs. It can't tell you that.
I'm not talking about any of those things you just mentioned. I'm talking about genetically. I'm talking about they are genetically linked together to having the same ancestor at some point. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
And this report, I'll send this to you. This shows that these people were 99.9% the same group of people. This is dealing with the Igbo, shoot, this is a lot to read right quick, but I'm gonna send this over to you. And you see here, you got Yoruba, Hausa, the Igbo, these all come from the same family of people. But yeah, I mean, I gotta get off. I gotta finish doing my little work. I got an assignment that's due by tomorrow. What about Wednesday? Well, that is tomorrow. So
okay, well, good luck on your assignment.
Thank you, madam. Gotta get this next degree to get to the $100,000 club. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
Yeah.
I'll be there in a couple more years, hopefully.
Let's get to it. Let's get it. Well, hey, thanks for everybody who tuned in. Hopefully I didn't bore y'all to death with my monotone voice. Thank you, Sheep, for allowing me to come on your platform and be so gracious as a host. And
no, thank you. This is when me and Kyle have these conversations, we can go back and forth all day. We literally did one time. So, I just wanted to have it live so people can be edified. They can look up these sources. Yes, get your DNA done. It'll tell you something about your at least your maternal line and your paternal line. You'll get that information. Does that weigh on you socially or anything like that? Absolutely not. Can you be totally West African like Kyle is, and he found out through his DNA, and still be practicing what's in the book. I'm not going to say Judaism, but what's in the book, absolutely, because there is a certain clause in there for grafting in, right? And we see that in the Old Testament happening several times. So, you know, religion is a choice, and we have to, you know, do our due diligence to make sure that our spirits are being taken care of. So with that, I say shalom. You guys have a good day and stay safe.